and then continue talking about the generative AI needs and how that bias needs to be applied. You can do this in an embedded sort of scenario where an H5P can be embedded into a distance learning course with the topic tweaked to adjust to that course's needs, or the assignment harnessing AI for good to be tweaked to align with the course's theme or learning outcomes, introducing students in a safe space how to utilize AI. This also can be implemented into course design, where it's scaffolded through an entire course, much like it would be in this instance, where they have opportunities to learn about these bits and pieces in various weeks. And we also recommend that it could be done in a workshop. So you can share this in professional development with your fellow colleagues or with instructors, offering a custom made for your institution sort of flavor for this assignment, really emphasizing that these skills need to be attached to the old skills that these instructors have always been wanting in their courses because their students are using this. They are touching it like they touch Google, thinking that it gives them the same credibility. And so hopefully these are takeaways that make that lift on all of us a little bit easier because clearly the lift is there.
And that gets us to our question slide. And just to let you know, you have access to our slides. So there's also our references for the slide and also our image credits. And if you want the slides, we got them from Slide Carnival. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share.
Okay, so thank you, Amanda Larson and Hannah. Is it Hannah? I don't know if
it's Hannah.
Okay, Hannah. Thank you. Hannah Primo. That was really informational. So we have a good amount of time for questions. I know we have some in the chat as well, which we're adding to our collaborative notes document. I'll just go over review the first question for folks that have just joined us. So someone asked, have the established citation styles and formats such as APA, MLA been updated to cite sources? And then our helpful other attendees answered it and they said yes. A lot of people already have guides.
All of you. All of you. All the links tossed in there. If we're nothing, we're librarians who share information. It's wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, so they jumped right in and they shared several examples. I know those will probably be revolving. I mean, is there anything else you want to add about citation styles that you learned from using this in your class? Did you give them a guide, for example?
Well, I know Grammarly as well as I think it's GPT and Gemini also offer like, how do I cite this? There's a button. It generates it for them. And so that's becoming more built into a lot of these processes. And so making students aware that, again, this is one of those instances where you don't have to do all the labor always. It will do some of that for you, but you still need to do it is something to keep in mind because this is new and shiny. It's not going to be on necessarily everyone's updated list where they go to figure out how to do this.
Thanks. And another question is, someone would actually love to hear one or two examples of what objects the students came up with for their assignment.
Well, this is running officially in spring of next year. We've had some students run through this content unofficially, not through the course. And she has done some wonderful examples of just like transcript creation for like videos and that sort of thing to reach out to communities. So she input some information in and was like, help me make a transcript for a video that will reach my community on my topic. And her topic was visibility in murders and how the news stream attaches to white women more so than anything. And she's like, let's explore the problematic issues with this topic. Let's make a PSA for our community and see how we can outreach better. And so she used AI to create some transcripts while inputting some information in to take some labor off of whomever might have been in this theoretical process, like doing this sort of thing. So this is a student that was just testing our work for us, but it was a really cool project that she ended up doing that was on the job essentially because she was paid for this labor she was doing testing.
Very cool. Interesting topic as well. I think I love hearing how people are integrating AI in these different ways than just, summarizing and kind of what we expect.
Yeah.
Our next question is, as a public school, we are limited in programming. We have access and or subscriptions to, that's a lot of us.
Yeah.
Are there any alternate programs suggested, maybe even a list of additional resources that could be substituted in place of Grammarly, etc.? and you mentioned some tools in your presentation, so I think they might be thinking of, if you know, online versions that might not be paid.
Yeah, I would recommend, well, first of all, it's going to be built into everything. So just keep your eye on Word. It'll be Word built in if it's not already. But we really recommend that you start, and this is like general advice that we give most people who come to us for help with instruction, is that please really rely on what you do have access to. So if you do have a tool that is in your institution, like it's perfectly fine to sub that in. I don't know of like a one-to-one replacement for Grammarly. But the Goblin Tools is free and you don't need a login to go there. And they do have on there, in addition to the Magic to Do, there is also a formalizer. So it will help take text that you have and make it more formal. So they could do that instead. And they also have which is great for neurospicy people, they have a tone. So it will like you could put text in and have it tell you like the tone of it, so that either you're replying in the tone that you intend or you are reading correctly the tone someone might have sent you in an email or something. So I would recommend Goblin Tool is pretty good in a pinch for that as a modification.
And I know it's the one that you incorporated in your assignment as well. So I'm sure when you come back to LILi next year, you can tell us how it went, and we can see, and maybe you can give some of those real examples and we kind of see them in action. So I hope that was
We'll have
helpful
a
in
whole
chat.
of examples.
Yeah, exactly. And how the grading went for each of these. We can talk rubrics too. So our next question is, when you have students do the basic prompts, and they have exposure to the AI tools, are you finding that they are already familiar with them, or are the tools relatively new to the students? And again, since you didn't have the class yet, this can be if your example person, for example, knew about AI.
So my course analyst was familiar in the sense that she knew it existed, but she hadn't really dabbled. And I kind of poked her a little bit. I was like, so your friends, what do your friends know about this? Like, just so I have a little more background while I'm building this. And she's like, I mean, everyone's like dabbled, but no one's using this like consistently in their daily lives. And this is more of a humanities side of students because that's the group she's from and her friends are from. And so they weren't familiar in the same way that some of us might be familiar in figuring out, how do we incorporate this into our daily lives? How do we figure out that this might be an assistant to us because there needs to be three of us to do our job? How do we manage that as one person? And so their needs and their uses are very different than perhaps what we're expecting, but I haven't found, she certainly didn't struggle with figuring out how to go and do the assignment and play with the technology. She was pretty excited about Goblin Tools, if I'm quite honest. So
very cool. The next question is pretty straightforward. So is this a 1, 2, or 3 credit course? And then also more about how in-depth is the course content based on that credit bear?
That's a real fair question. It's a 3 credit bearing course. It's an in-person. We'll be meeting twice a week. And it's going to be a full semester long. So this is a very traditional sort of course that students are taking. This is not the 1, 2 credits that sometimes libraries offer, which includes our library. And the course content focuses on information and social justice needs, essentially, looking at biases, looking at how information is created, who is privileged in these sort of scenarios. Goodness gracious, it goes in depth to a lot of these topics, and AI is just one of them because we are talking about algorithms and what are Google algorithms? What are they? How do they surround our lives? Let's talk about getting ahead of biased information that is shared on the web and talking about the digital nature of information. So we get really in depth, but not necessarily in depth on AI. We will be talking about the ecological nature of using it because we think that's really important for students to understand as well. And if someone decides that they do not want to do the assignment for this reason, we will find an alternative for them, but they will still have a reflection that they will be doing about that as well.
They'll also be able to use our institution has their own version of Microsoft Copilot that doesn't collect data. So if they're worried about privacy, we'll be able to have them use that instance rather than like say Chat GPT while on the web.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Was that something you requested or was it offered?
No, we did not have any say in that.
Okay,
that was our IT department. And someone sold Microsoft. Yeah, that was part of that.
Okay. Speaking of, I mean, talking about the feedback about use of AI, and this will be our last question, and we'll move on to our next presenter. Have you gotten any feedback or pushback from your colleagues or other faculty on incorporating AI into assignments?
No, no, we've not. Our institution has been very, 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 very slow to make any broad statements about AI in general, because I think they're nervous about tamping down the way that they can use it on the research side of where they're going to make money from like research grants and stuff. And they're just now sort of coming around with like, we're kind of interested in what you're doing with AI. Can you run it through the Drake Teaching and Learning Institute first before you do things for some workshops that our colleagues are giving? But as far as instruction goes, it's kind of been like nothing, crickets.
Yeah, all of that.
Okay, sometimes silence is good,
Yeah,
but
we'll
I
take it.
imagine you'll get a lot right as you get your student evals and other people are interested in this, and you'll be, I'm sure, presenting to your college eventually because they always find us. This will be a really interesting topic for folks to share. So we want to thank Amanda Larson and Hannah Primo. This was really exceptional. I think a lot of people came away with some tools they can use, and so we'll go ahead and move forward. We hope you guys will hang around with us for the rest of the day as well. So next up, we have Emily Bush, and I'll go ahead and add you to our spotlight. Welcome. And they're going to talk about courageous conversations leading community discussions about media literacy. And Emily, you should be able to share as well whenever you're ready, or let me know if you need some help.
Okay, thank you. Let me make sure I choose the right one. Okay. So thank you for having me here today. I hope everyone is having a nice summer and you've had some time to relax during your summer. I am very excited to talk to you all today about a program that I took part in last fall, 23, Courageous Rhode Island, Courageous Conversations, which led to student-led discussions on media literacy topics. So to start off, I'll get into why now, which I think is kind of obvious. I debated whether to put that in the presentation at all, kind of preaching to the choir about media literacy. Then I'll go into the CRI curriculum and talk a little bit about these student-led conversations. Because speaking to a group of librarians, I feel like I could ask you all to write down a definition of media literacy, and you would all write down unique definitions that are all correct and different. Media literacy is this huge umbrella, which is why I like this infographic from Media Literacy Now that encompasses everything from digital wellness to data privacy, to just simply evaluating where information comes from. So unless you've been unplugged for the past 2 weeks, you are aware that media literacy has never been more important than it is now. This presentation has had leading up to it several huge media events, from the attempted assassination on Trump to Biden dropping out of the campaign, presidential campaign. And with those big events come lots of conspiracy theories and misinformation and disinformation. So we have this need to fill in the gaps with narratives when we don't have all the information that we're looking for. And there are no angels. There was mis and disinformation coming from the right and the left after the attempted assassination. But I say all this just to lay the groundwork for what I think everyone knows, that media literacy is extremely important leading into this election season. So I wanted to share these truths, I guess we can call them, from the News Literacy Project. Misinformation, as we've seen in the last 2 weeks, proliferates in proportion to curiosity and attention. So the bigger the event, the more likely you are to have lots of misinformation and disinformation floating around on the internet and social media. And news coverage unfolds in real time, and reputable news organizations are trying to report information accurately, so perhaps slower than in the world of social media we want things to happen. And that allows opportunists to slip in and capitalize on that moment by spreading misinformation and conspiracy theories. So that's where the Courageous Rhode Island Courageous Conversations program comes in. It is a media literacy program that is aimed at reducing the hate that leads to violent extremism. It is an initiative of the Media Education Lab, which is how I, as a Tennessean, although the program is national, it's very much centered in Rhode Island, came to know about the program. If you're familiar with Renee Hobbs, who I'm kind of like a fangirl of, to me, she's like the media literacy educator. She's the founder of Media Education Lab. And I should point out that this program is funded by a grant from the Department of Homeland Security. So the Courageous Rhode Island curriculum provides you with all the materials you need to lead these conversations yourself or have students lead them, which I'm a big proponent of. So I wanted to share some of the topics that are in this toolbox. The first one, why media literacy matters, really just gets into the nuts and bolts of media literacy. As librarians, we tend to toss around words like media literacy, information literacy, AI literacy, and we know what these terms mean. But in general, I would say that people don't really think about media literacy. So this would be a great one if you're introducing the idea to a new group of people. There's a lesson on preventing violent extremism, high conflict online. Is there good conflict online? Conflict entrepreneurs, which I think is a really interesting one. This idea that there is an incentive to people online to create conflict. The old saying, there's no such thing as bad PR, holds true in a social media environment. Feelings and facts dives into conspiracy theories, our need to have narratives to explain the events of the world, leading to a rise in conspiracy theory thinking. The influencers, how social media is reshaping people's decisions about who and what to trust. Increasingly, people are seeking their news rather than from traditional news outlets from a single person that they feel like they trust online. Free speech, hate speech, and censorship. This is the conversation that my fellows chose to use for 2 out of 3 of their conversations. It centers on who should be regulating speech online. Should it be the tech companies? Should it be the people? Should it be the government? Should anyone? And then finally, targets of propaganda. So who is being targeted to receive harmful propaganda? And something that we don't talk about a whole lot is there good propaganda? So each lesson has a wealth of tools to help you put together these conversations on your campus or in your community. Everything from lesson plans, and I'll note that the lesson plans, if you wanted to use them in some of your information literacy instruction, they have plans for 15-minute lessons, plans for hour lessons, so to fit all sorts of needs. They have slide decks. They have scripts to go along with the slide decks, which was really great for the students. They liked having that. They have video summaries, discussion questions. So everything under the sun to make this easy to implement. So going back to the courageous Rhode Island professional development that I took part in back in fall of 23, as part of that program, we had a thought partner or a partner that we would work with to develop a lesson plan to implement using the curriculum. So my partner was a middle school instructional coach out in Coalinga, California, which I'm not familiar with that area of the country. So we thought it would be really cool to have the college students lead a discussion with the middle school students. So this idea that maybe college students could relate better to these Gen Alpha middle schoolers than Josh or I could. And I'll come back to that in just a minute. But this idea of cross-generational media literacy discussions led me to create the fellowship that these students took part in. At Vanderbilt Libraries, we have this Buchanan Fellowships program, which gives librarians a lot of flexibility to develop a seminar-style course that provides experiential learning around library resources and services. So my fellowship was enhancing civic engagement across the generations through media literacy education. And the real heart of the fellowship was the discussions that I knew that I wanted students to lead. But a requirement was also to have a deliverable, and the students' deliverable was any sort of media object they wanted to create that promoted how media literacy can enhance civic engagement. So there are 3 conversations that I had set up and 3 fellows. And I was thinking that they would each lead a conversation, but they had a better idea. They wanted to lead all of the conversations. So our 3 conversations were with a high school, a senior center, and the middle school. And we started with the University School of Nashville, which is a private K-12 school, which is conveniently located right across the street from the main library at Vanderbilt, because our students did not have transportation. So we just walked across the street, and we had an existing partnership there. These are private school students. They're high achieving. It was very much like a peer-to-peer conversation, which I thought would be a good starting point, because one of the things that I really emphasized was being able to change the curriculum based on the audience. So what better than, what better group to start with than peers, because they're going to know the right pop cultural references to insert into that presentation. So we had a lunch and learn with about 25 students. So pretty good turnout for optional with high schoolers. There was free pizza, so that may have played a role. The second conversation was at the Center for Older Adults, 50 Ford. And one of the fellows couldn't make it to this, but because of the transportation issues, I drove them out there. So that is a consideration if you're doing a community talk, whether the students have transportation and what sort of transportation you have in your community. Nashville's public transportation is lacking. So I drove them out there, and we had a lively conversation. Ahead of the 50 Ford discussion, we had the director of the centers talk to the students about some considerations for speaking with older adults, and some of the things we talked about, some of the memes and references in the presentation, since memes are very much like a dog whistle for the in-group, trying to think of something that would have a broad audience rather than something that only 2 people in the room might get. We also talked about some of the vocabulary in that free speech presentation, like deplatforming was a term that many of the seniors were not familiar with. So they took a little bit more time giving really high profile examples like Trump being kicked off Twitter that hopefully more people would be familiar with. And then the final conversation was with the middle schoolers. And this one had a lot of logistical issues because they're much like this conference. We're in Central Time and they were out in California in Pacific Time. So between that and class schedules, we ended up having an asynchronous conversation on Flip. And we used the Why Media Literacy Matters curriculum. We didn't think the free speech, hate speech and censorship would, we thought it was a little too advanced for 11 and 12-year-old students. So they were journalism students at this school, and the fellows all chose a piece of media that they thought, the middle schoolers would enjoy or think was funny. We were trying to get something, that they would be drawn to. So I think 2 out of 3 were memes. The middle schoolers worked in groups to answer the 5 key questions of media literacy, which are here on the screen. So who is the author? What is the purpose? What techniques are used to hold your attention? What lifestyles, values, and points of view are represented? How might different people interpret the message, and what is omitted from the message? And then the college students chimed in one more time to provide feedback on the middle schoolers' analysis. So not quite as great as an in-person discussion, but I actually think it worked really well for the middle school audience. One of the things that Josh, the instructional coach at the middle school, and I had discussed is that he thought the students might freeze up on Zoom and not really want to discuss because it can be hard to get discussions going on Zoom. So the asynchronous nature, I think, actually played in the favor for this particular audience. So because these fellowships are grounded in experiential learning, the fellows had to submit reflections. So I wanted to share just a few of those. The student had a newfound appreciation for how people's lived experiences influence their outlook on media literacy's broader implications. And this student who missed the conversation at the senior center focused on the intergenerational conversations with the younger generations and how it reaffirmed their belief that media literacy is really important as a skill that should be taught throughout life. And then this final student said, this journey didn't just make me more knowledgeable about the importance of media literacy education. It inspired me to continue this work outside the fellowship through conversations with friends, family, and peers. Importantly, being a fellow was more than just discussion and learning, it was action. And I really liked that last part of what they said, the idea of being out there and taking action. I was a little bit worried because some of the students had to skip class in order to lead these discussions, but ultimately, it's more of a life experience than sitting in a classroom. I also liked that they mentioned this idea of what CRI talks a lot about as the ripple effect. So as we have these conversations in the community promoting the civil discourse, the hope is that there will be a ripple effect where the people who are part of the conversation then continue it with others. So a few quick tips. If you're thinking about potentially implementing these, and if you're looking to implement them before the November election, kind of have to act quick depending on when your college goes back into session. But I recommend looking at existing partnerships. So organizations that you already have a relationship with in the community. If you don't have any community relationships, maybe looking at student groups that might have an interest in media literacy. I've always thought that it would be fun to get the campus Democrats and Republicans together for something like this. And then let students take the lead. They'll really surprise you. I just showed students the curriculum and let them pick what was of most interest to them. And 2 out of the 3 were pre-law, so they were very interested in free speech. I'm probably more familiar with some of the other topics, but they did a great job. And then there is a planning guide on the CRI website, which I will pull up here at the end of the presentation, that takes you through the who, what, when, where, and why. So if you can, partners really maximize success. So thinking about partnering with a student organization or a community organization. Then choose a conversation if you're comfortable with it. Let students choose what interests them. That intrinsic motivation will get them far. Choose a date and time, which seems really simple, but I found gets really complicated around student class and work schedules. And then choose a location. As I mentioned, transportation was an issue for students. If you're on a residential campus, for students don't necessarily have cars, and in a city that doesn't have great transportation, you might have to consider doing virtual. And then the why, I feel like, is pretty obvious. It's never been more important. Our information landscape just keeps getting more and more complicated. I've been interested in media literacy for a very long time, and it almost seems quaint to think about where social media was in like 2007 versus what it has become, and what a driver in society it has become for influencing elections. Maybe someone imagined it, probably. But if you are interested, this is the web address, and I'll put it in the chat as well. If you do have hold a courageous conversation, see if I can type and talk. They like them to be registered so they can track it. So there's also a program registration that's on the website as well. And Renee Hobbs and Pam Steger, who head up the program, are happy to sit down and talk with you about the planning process. And I'd love to hear from you as well. Or if you have any questions about what I did, my email is here on the screen.
Thank you so much, Emily. There are a few questions in the chat that we're going to go over for the next 4 minutes or so. And some of these you might have already answered, so feel free just to kind of click if you want to. What is the age audience of the curriculum?
The curriculum is aimed towards a general audience that wouldn't have a lot of previous knowledge about media literacy. So I felt like we needed to adjust it a bit for the middle school audience and for the senior audience, but it's kind of just a general adult audience.
And do students have to get parent or legal guardian permission? How do you recruit those participants?
The college students, well, the answer is the same. It was no for us on both sides, for the college students and the middle school students. It was just a matter of the teachers agreeing to it.
Just checking to see if there are any other questions in the chat. Don't see any coming in right now. Just check. We have some resources that Esther put in there for California media literacy.
Yeah, I see that. That's great. That's really on the forefront. There's very few states with any media literacy curriculum.
Okay, hold on. I think there might actually be a couple of other questions that are shared here. Give me just 1 second. Okay, oh, here's a good one. Were there any conversations that surprised you between the generations?
Yeah, I was really surprised with the conversation at the seniors center. The seniors were more into TikTok than I had anticipated. I'm not on TikTok, and I'm like an old millennial, but kind of like they were knowledgeable about TikTok, but then we did have to explain deplatforming, and they were really into the conversation, really engaged and enjoyed having the college students come out. They were very concerned about their teenage grandchildren.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. There is another question here that is in the document that they linked to. And sorry if they missed this, but how did you choose a school in California since, you know, you're out in Tennessee? How did you might have already explained this, but
Yeah, I don't know if I explained it well. As part of the professional development course that I took part in with Media Education Lab, we were partnered with people, and we had the choice to either create a partnership or just be thought partners. And I was partnered with the middle school instructional coach, and we just really wanted to make a true partnership happen. So using Flip is how we did it.
awesome. Well, we are right at time, maybe like 30 seconds or so to spare. So just before we're going to take a break for a few minutes here, we do encourage everyone, there's in the chat the link to the LILi posters. We have some excellent posters in there, and we want to give everyone some time to go in, watch those posters, ask questions, pose comments, whatever you have. But thank you so much, Emily. This was a great presentation. We appreciate your time today and sharing what's happening. This is really wonderful. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
All right, everyone. Like I said, we're going to take a quick break, go look at some posters, and we will be coming back to lightning talks at, let's see, I believe it'll be 4:20. Sorry, I have to do math. I'm in Florida and we are not on Pacific time. So
1:20 for Pacific.
yes.
Everybody froze.
Feel free to reach out to the poster presenters on the collaborative page. So I have the honor of introducing our lightning talk presenters. The lightning talks are going to be between 5 to 7 minutes, so quite fast with the 3-minute Q&A. And so our first presenters are, the title is Health Professions, Learners, and Gen AI, Current Use and Implications for Practice by Ed Spur and Emily Harris. So thank you all. Take it away.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to share our screen and then I will let Ed take us away. All right. Can you all see my screen? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. So as Emily just said, she and I will be presenting our joint work on behalf of both ourselves and our co-authors. Emily is dental and cancer information librarian, I think, over at Augusta University, and I am clinical information librarian over at the Augusta University of Georgia Medical Partnership here in Athens, Georgia. And the two of us work with learners at different stages of their careers that are working in the health professions. And that was the main thing that really drove this project, is trying to get a sense of specifically how this particular audience uses these applications. So the main rationale of this is when we took a look at a lot of the published research about this, a lot of it really focuses in this notion of what might happen in the future, not so much what's going on right now. And even when folks are talking about the here and now, many times what they're talking about is attitudes towards generative AI by both faculty and students. And where actual use data is presented, a lot of times that's in proprietary reports by different sorts of organizations. So it's not necessarily part of the general literature. So we really wanted to get a better sense of how health profession students are using these tools, and also maybe a more granular sense that's presented into the forums. So being librarians, we decided that maybe a survey would be a good thing. And indeed, we do think that a survey is probably the best way to try to get an overall view of this question. So we put together a short survey, fairly granular survey, but still small enough to not be too much of a responder burden, to try to gauge the current usage of generative AI applications like ChatGPT, but also other ones by this population. We worked with our Office of Institutional Effectiveness, as well as our Institutional Review Board, to color within the lines, but also make sure that we didn't spam everybody in the institution. So we came up with 1,600 randomly selected health profession students at both Augusta University as well as the medical school over here at the partnership. And we sent those folks a link to the survey and Qualtrics, and also a link to the informed consent and information about the study. We also, for good measure, posted some flyers with that same information around the campus.
So let's look at the results that we got from the survey. So we got 101 responses from a healthy mix of nursing, medical, dental, allied health students, and then other makes up other biomedical programs in our graduate school. And of those respondents, 70% reported using a generative AI application. And for the most part, they are using ChatGPT specifically. There were a few other applications used, but largely ChatGPT. Responses show that some students are using these resources for personal work, but primarily they're using it at least somewhat for academic. You can see in our pie chart here, there's a good mix of personal and academic use. And then they're using these applications quite frequently. A few just try them once or twice and don't currently use them, but the large majority use them at least once a month or more. But in addition to understanding which of these applications were being used, we also want to find out what tasks they're being used for. So while we certainly saw some usage for task-based prompts, like generating practice questions or annotating a diagram, the data shows that the majority of students are using these resources for information retrieval. That's things like literature searching, generating summaries of topics, or getting more information about a particular disease or diagnostic test. And some of these information retrieval tasks align with the skills that medical librarians, we aim to teach our medical learners, and are an even further extension of the use of quick access, point of care tools, resources such as UpToDate that libraries subscribe to.
So the primary limitation of this study is we didn't really get a lot of response. We only got 6% of the folks that we sent invitations to, and actually the response rate from invitations is a little bit lower than that, because we did have a couple of folks respond via those flyers that we sent out. So because of that, we're not quite sure just how representative these results are. As Emily just pointed out, we got back a lot of folks saying they use these applications, but maybe those were just folks that were really excited about Gen AI, and that's why they responded to the survey. And we do understand that even though we think surveys are a good measure of this kind of thing, that surveys are still kind of a blunt instrument. But the big implication is that students are using ChatGPT to look things up. And especially in the health professions context, at health professions libraries, we spend a lot of time and a lot of money at these kind of point of care resources or these kind of summative resources that kind of do the same thing. So it does raise the question of, what exactly are we going to all this trouble for if you could just use something like UpToDate to get the same answer? Also, if these students are spending so much time using ChatGPT, are they ever going to learn to use those conventional resources, especially resources that may have more detailed information to give them as they go forward in their careers? But also this notion of hallucinations or confabulations is an interesting one. I mean, we know from prior research that this happens all the time, that these generative AI applications make stuff up, but our students don't really seem to be aware of that fact. Here's Emily's contact information. Here's my contact information. And importantly, here's also the project page where I think right now we have the survey instrument posted. And as we continue to sort of delve into our information and write up our hopeful publication going forward, that information will be on this project page as well. And here are other authors that could not join us today. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you so much, Ed and Emily. So we have just like 3 minutes if anyone wants to ask any questions. This is fascinating to see.
I have a question. Have some of the people who have worked on this, have they used if it is Chat GPT that's being helpful instead of using UpToDate? Have you tried comparing what Chat GPT can do and what UpToDate would have offered instead?
Not as much, Marcia. That's kind of outside the scope of this particular project. I think there are some publications that have come out relatively recently that sort of try to get at that question in terms of how well ChatGPT and other generative AI applications work specifically in biomedical education queries. But yeah, no, that's a really good question. Thanks.
Are there any other questions you can? Oh, there's a question that came in. Are educators cautioning students' use of AI due to inconsistencies, especially in health medical queries? How are these implications being addressed?
Have you heard anything, Emily?
Yeah, so I was going to say I'm on a couple curriculum committees and I hear about this, but it's still very just kind of up to the professor. But I think that when I'm giving library instruction at the beginning of the semester or whenever, I've started giving a snippet about AI. So I am talking about what platforms exist, but also what pitfalls to look out for and things like that. So I am definitely addressing the implications in my own teaching. And there's lots of things being said about it, in curriculum planning in general.
Thank you. I think we are maybe 30 seconds from time. So thank you again, Ed and Emily, for your presentation. And remember, you can always look back at our shared notes for LILiCon. So thank you again, both of you. And the material has been posted up too. So our next presenter is Carrie Cullen, presenting on improving library and instruction accessibility using Morphic.
Thank you. All right, I think you're seeing my slides now. Yeah, great. I'm Carrie Cullen, a research librarian for physical sciences at UC Irvine. I am a white woman with auburn hair wearing glasses and a purple shirt. So take a moment, if you will, to imagine this scenario. You're sitting down to an unfamiliar library computer to do some work, and you're having trouble seeing the tiny icons at the top of the programs you're using. What do? Well, in a lot of cases, you can use a Control+ shortcut or a slider bar to zoom in on the text of a document. But this does nothing to increase the size of the menu text or the icons, the stuff that you actually need to use the features of a program. Even if you hover over items, they stay small. You get a pop-up with itty-bitty text in it. Frustrating, right? So this screenshot shows how much I can enlarge that text of the document, but those icons and the menu text stays super small. And you may not know that there are built-in features on most computers that allow you to enlarge everything on your screen. But you have to know where to look for these, because just typing in zoom or enlarge text in your system search bar isn't going to help you. And if you're already having trouble seeing, you shouldn't have to dig through layers of menus in order to find these settings. So the solution I offer you is the free Morphic toolbar, also known as a Morphic bar. And this is a toolbar that just makes the built-in accessibility tools on PCs and Macs convenient and easy to turn on and off. And I've got a link there if you're interested in downloading it for your personal computer. They don't need any information from you unless you'd like to create a custom toolbar, in which case you just give them your email. And for organizations, the solution they offer is Morphic Enterprise. This is still a free tool, and it allows your organization to create a customizable Morphic bar for your institution. The creators of the product will work with your IT department to set this up. And this is private and secure with no tracking or selling of data. Yay, we like that. So here's a link if you want to learn a little bit more about Morphic Enterprise. So the UCI libraries have been piloting Morphic. And this bar chart shows the usage before and after we installed Morphic. So the orange blocks are before Morphic was installed. The lavender is after Morphic. And the text size tool saw 83 uses before we installed Morphic, and zooms in the way, 270 uses after the fact. The magnifier, high contrast, and color blindness tools didn't see much usage at all before we installed this. That's why there's little teeny tiny bars there. The color blindness tool, in fact, wasn't used during our testing period. And then after we installed Morphic, they saw 83 uses for the magnifier, 125 uses for high contrast tool, and 33 uses for the color blindness tool. So we were really happy with this pilot. We didn't get any complaints about the installation of this tool, and clearly a lot more people are making use of the accessibility tools that are built in on our computers. So I don't have time in this lightning talk to go into this, but I have to mention Morphic's AT on Demand, which is still in development, but coming out soon. This is really exciting, and it allows users of assistive technology, things like Dragon Professional or JAWS, to use any computer in your library, not just the one station that has specialized software installed. So it's a really great leap forward in equity for people who need to use assistive tech. And you can learn more about it at that link there. So that is it for my super fast slides, and I'm going to jump out of these and let's move Zoom onto another screen so it's not in the way. And then I've got up the LILi schedule here to show you some examples of how Morphic works. So on our employee computers, Morphic is set up to be minimized at startup. So I just need to click on this little green lizard icon here in order to launch it. For our public computers, if you log in or boot up the computer, it's going to be open like this. And anyone who doesn't want to use it can just click that X and it goes away without any messages asking if you're sure or anything annoying like that. As I said, this is a customizable bar. So we have links here to our accessibility website and our Disability Services Center website. And then here is this text size tool, which I use all the time. Just click that plus and you'll see that it scales everything on my screen up nice and big. So even those icons become visible. And then just click that minus sign to go back down. If you happen to have really great eyesight, you can keep shrinking this, and that way you can fit more windows on your screen if that's something you're interested in. So let me scroll down really quick. The magnifier tool is something I find really useful when teaching. Say you want to draw folks' attention to something in particular, just click the show magnifier, and now I can show people where a login link is or draw their attention to some other content. And if I want to change the magnification, I can just do that there and go back down to hide. And now it has gone away. Okay, so scroll up a little bit here. Okay, so this next tool, not so much accessibility related, but really handy, and it does make it more accessible. The snip tool, if I click copy, it's going to bring up crosshairs for me, and I can select the portion of my screen that I want to screenshot. And now that is on my clipboard, and I can paste that into a document. And I'm just remembering that I don't think I remembered to click share sound, so this probably won't work. But if you highlight text and click Read Selected, the built-in reader on your computer will read that text for you.
Over 13% of Americans identify as having one or more disabilities.
And you just click Stop anytime you want that to stop. And so I'm probably about out of time here, but I just want to point out the contrast and color issues. I don't like to do those on Zoom because it's kind of disorienting for people to make that switch. But we can turn on high contrast mode, a color blindness filter, dark mode, or night mode to be a little easier on your eyes in the evening, just with a click, and it'll switch everything over nice and easy. So that is it for my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for that presentation. So we have one question so far. It says, how did you learn about Morphic?
Yeah, so I'm on an IT accessibility work group at our university, and the creators of Morphic, which are the nonprofit Raising the Floor, they came in and did a presentation with us. They had a relationship with one of the folks who leads that group, and I was really excited about it right away. And so that's why we ended up launching this pilot. Thanks.
That's wonderful. Are there any other questions for Carrie? Everybody's making comments like this is going to be so useful and amazing with plus signs, cool beans. So thank you for showcasing that to all of us.
Oh, Nicole asked, what would I add to Morphic? Gosh, I don't know. It's really pretty useful. Like if you create a customized Morphic bar, you can have it do a lot of things for you already. There might be, there might be certain program tasks that are not an option, but say you want to just have a button that'll launch a Zoom chat with your supervisor right away in one click, you can do that. Yeah, that's a great question. I'd have to think on that to really come up with my Master of the Universe answers for that. I see Martha's asking, does it help with color blindness? It does. There's a color blindness filter on there. And so when you toggle that on, it'll bring up the color blindness filter options on your computer. So depending on what kind of color blindness you have, you can set it to show most effectively for you.
Thank you, Carrie. And I think we're almost out of time, but there was one question of, are you aware of any other institutions using Morphic?
There are a few. I couldn't name them offhand, but I know that they've listed them on their website. But it's definitely my hope. I'm meeting with some people to get it in classrooms in our university, and I'm hoping to get the rest of the University of California campuses on board as well. So spread the word. This is a great tool.
Thank you so much for your time, Carrie. Up next, we have Zach Wellhouse, and he'll be presenting Developing Information Literacy Continuing Education for K-12 Teachers.
Thank you. Is everything displaying properly?
Yes, we can see.
Wonderful. Wonderful, and hello. I am Zach Wellhouse, and today I'm discussing 2 online continuing education courses that I'm creating with Kelly McElroy, my partner who is unfortunately not able to be here today. Kelly is OSU's Community Outreach Librarian, and we're doing this as a way that K-12 teachers can add information literacy to courses in an environment with few librarians. I'm an online learning librarian at Oregon State University. I teach information literacy through my liaison work with our eCampus and our College of Education. So when our Dean of the College of Education asked about creating materials about information literacy for teachers, Callie and I were ready. At least we thought we were. First, a little background. Since the early 1980s, when the state library began tracking the number of licensed teacher librarians in Oregon, they've dropped from a high of 819 FTE to 158 in the 2024 school year. And at the same time, the population of the state has continued to grow. Most students and classrooms in Oregon do not have access to a school librarian. So we're not trying to replace the work of teacher librarians, but we're trying to bridge a training gap. Our hope is that teachers will use these modules to inform and develop existing lesson plans. The modules will be available in two forms. The first is a free self-guided version available through Canvas Commons as under a Creative Commons license. And the second is a paid guided course that will provide 2.4 continuing education credits upon completion, focused on our Oregon environment. Our modules center on the Oregon Association of School Libraries, which are library and written standards, but it also draws from other relevant frameworks. For example, one standard asks students to inquire, think critically, and gain knowledge. So our first module is centered on ways to promote critical thinking using specific tools as examples. We touch on Wikipedia, algorithmic bias in searching and other algorithms, especially AI, and research strategies for developing curiosity tempered with informed skepticism. We've learned from K-12 librarians, consultants at our state library, and other librarians in higher education who've spent years thinking about the bridge of information literacy from high school into college. Through these interviews, we've developed a list of resources that we hope to showcase in the course. Specifically, the shared databases and tutorials from the Oregon School Library Information System have been invaluable. Our primary audience for this course is the teachers who will be taking it, but we also need to be aware of their audiences, their students and their schools, which also includes their departments or their school boards in some cases, whoever has commentary or input on the curriculum. Acknowledging this relationship with schools is important to us since it's the lived context of what teachers do. As one example of this dynamic, our early research indicated the importance of a wide-scale adaptation of terminology across departments. So that way, every time students get a new infusion of information literacy instruction, they're not resetting to square one, learning a new method, learning a new term. However, the lived reality is that sometimes one teacher uses the SIFT method and another teacher will use a different nomenclature. So while unified terminology is valuable, it isn't always our top priority. Let's take a look at where we are in the process. So here's a look at the draft module of the middle and high school versions of Unit 3. At this point, teachers will already have worked through Unit 1, which focuses on inquiry and search, as well as Unit 2, which focuses on close reading and interpreting the source's formal elements. So now it's time to dig into the lateral reading and the synthesis of sources to create new knowledge. Each module is divided into learning objective clusters based on the guiding standards. Clusters contain text, sample assignments, and short videos. And in this module, we have 3 clusters, the first of which is shown on the screen. This cluster is about analyzing and comparing sources. Here we focus on how information sources engage with one another. So we'll invite questions like, is anyone else saying something similar? And why do you trust this source or whoever is saying this thing? In other words, it's using the SIFT method to encourage students to travel upstream and travel laterally in comparing sources. Next, in the second cluster, we look at information and knowledge creation as a process. We focus on several different tools for showing how sources can engage with one another, how to keep track of sources, and how to share evidence. Finally, in the final cluster for Module 3, we look at some hands-on examples with guidance of how to integrate similar synthesis exercises into group projects. Like all modules in this course, Unit 3 ends with a reflection exercise. The asynchronous continuing education edition also includes a message board and an assignment for the continuing education teacher students, which asks the teachers to examine their lesson plans for areas where materials covering the module could be helpful. That way it's engaging with work that the teachers are already doing and engaging with course materials. Our next steps are finishing a first draft of the middle and high school course and sharing it for feedback. As for lessons learned, the project has been giving plenty of hands-on experience with pre-college pedagogy, K-12 standards, and the different expectations in non-college environments. This has really challenged me and Kelly to expand our understanding of information literacy in an age-appropriate way, and at the same time, developing materials for an adult audience of professional educators who will then take the next step and repurpose this material for their students. This project has also deepened our practice for our existing teaching duties. For example, I manage our library's research how-to guides, which are Canvas modules that the OSU faculty can incorporate into any course shell. Any links that I make between the lessons from this project and the how-to guides can only help for future students at OSU. That said, our hope is that these modules will benefit anyone looking to add information literacy instruction to their K-12 courses. We will be looking for some early reviewers once we hit a milestone in our development, so please contact one of us if you would be interested. Thank you very much, and I think it's time for questions now. These barking dogs will allow it.
Thank you so much, Zach, for your presentation. Are there any questions? You can unmute and ask or put it in the shared notes Google document. There's a question. You mentioned publishing your results. Any ideas where you're going to submit?
Not at this point. Our primary form of publishing will be sharing the results within our different networks of connections and saying here are the Canvas sites so that they're more usable resources. And anything in terms of article publishing we're going to wait and figure that out after we have the actual material to engage with.
Thank you. And Esther said, please send info about your results to the LILi list too.
Yeah, definitely, will do. Thank you for the request.
Are there any questions, other questions for Zach? And the LIRT listserv too.
Taking notes.
I had a question about how does your soft launch, how do you see that looking for the fall?
That's going to be the non-continuing education credit version. So it's just going to be the course materials shared on an online Canvas course. And at that point, we'll have shared it with our stakeholders internally and our connections in the state library. And if anyone talks about requesting information from this presentation, I already have 3 or 4 people and organizations from the comments. So we're just going to do a big announcement and email, swing the doors open, and see what people think.
That's amazing. Wishing you all the best with this project.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're almost at time for our next presenter. Thank you so much, Zach. And so for the lightning talks, we have our last presenters, Allison Williams and Brianne Austin, presenting A Scandalous Fun Time, How Celebrity Background Checks Can Instruct, Amuse, and Create Engaging IL Instruction.
Thank you, everybody. I am recovering from COVID, so please excuse my voice. So, thank you for joining us today for our lightning talk, Scandalous Fun Time, How Celebrity Background Checks Can Instruct, Amuse, and Create Engaging IL Instruction. My name is Brianne Austin, and I'm here with my colleague, Allison Williams. We're from CSU Channel Islands in Camarillo, California. We're going to put a link to our slides as well as our lesson plan in the chat, but let's go right ahead. I'm going to pass it over to Allison, and she's going to introduce you to the exercise. Allison, you're muted, sorry.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Oh, now I'm not starting. Stop that. All right, so the premise is for the scandalous celebrity background check that the library is hiring and the students are acting as our hiring committee. They need to do a background check for our applicants. Am I still sharing my screen?
No.
No, I apologize for that. I accidentally unshared your thing. I'm so sorry.
No problem. There we go. So the students need to do a background check on the applicants and find out if there is a scandal connected to them that might embarrass us. So a walkthrough of this lesson is we start the class off with a brief overview of how to find search terms and how to search in the library catalog. Then the class is broken up into groups and each group is assigned an applicant. They first go into Wikipedia and find out some basic background information about their applicant. Then they go into Google and find out what scandal is connected to their celebrity applicant. And then they're going to take those search terms they found in Wikipedia and Google and go into the library catalog and find a newspaper or magazine article about this scandal. Throughout all of this, they're filling out a survey that's letting us know what search terms they're using and where they're searching. At the end of class, each group will present who their applicant was, what the scandal is, and whether or not they would recommend hiring them. And we like to debate them. Whatever decision they make, we give them a little pushback to get some more engagement and get them really thinking about their decision. One of the students' favorite applicants that we have is Martha Stewart. And they are very split on whether or not they would recommend hiring her. Some students say, no, you can't trust her and you need to trust your librarians. Other students say, yeah, she's going to make us brownies and we're going to hang out with Snoop Dogg. And others say, yes, she's great at PR and is going to bring in funding to the library. So now the learning objectives for this lesson are understanding how to craft an effective search strategy, understanding how to use Wikipedia and Google to find search terms, and demonstrating how to search the library catalog. So now I will hand it back over to Brianne.
So here are some things we learned along the way that might help you with this exercise if you decide to use it. The first is not to pick triggering scandals. So we avoided sexual assault, domestic violence, child abuse, racism, transphobia. Students don't need to be triggered to complete the learning objectives, but also you don't want to banter a hiring decision involving a problematic scandal. Additionally, we learned not to include celebrities with sex scandals because students were incredibly uncomfortable presenting on them. Even if we chose an applicant with numerous scandals, they would pick the sex scandal and then be uncomfortable. So just stay away from those. We also noticed students had some favorites, like Allison mentioned, Martha Stewart's always a hit, but they really like unknown murder scandals. So Delia Owens, Ann Perry, very popular. If you don't know Ann Perry's scandal, we do recommend a Google. It's wild. Students also really liked very topical scandals. So for example, Shakira was an applicant the week her music video for the song El Jefe dropped, and the music video featured her nanny who had told her that her partner was cheating on her, and she was also getting a percentage of the royalties for life on the song. So it was all over the news cycle. But a semester later, when she wasn't in the news cycle, she wasn't as popular as an applicant. We also had to accept that we might not be as cool to 18-year-olds as we thought. An obvious choice for this exercise as a library was Robin Thicke because of the lawsuit with Marvin Gaye's family and over the use of Marvin Gaye's sampling for blurred lines. However, our students didn't know who Robin Thicke was. They know his song because it came out when most of them were 7 years old. So we quickly stopped using him. But most importantly, it's to have fun. So interaction and laughter are critical parts of the success of this exercise. It's talking with students, it's bantering with them, it's debating them. We want students to learn, but the biggest objective, honestly, is to get them to come back and be comfortable with a librarian. So let's go ahead and look at how you can adapt this exercise. One of the benefits here is that it is incredibly flexible. So you can adapt it in numerous ways. We've been using this in a flipped classroom one-shot setting. So students would watch a quick video before class on how to find search terms and search the library catalog. And then in class, we would really focus on engaging them with this exercise. However, we've also used this for high school visits to get students engaged and comfortable in a college library setting. This fall, we're going to offer it as an open workshop, and we're trying to adapt it to a micro learning game for a tabling event at a library orientation during our welcome week as well. You can also just change the applicants up to fit like a specific theme. So you can narrow it to academic scandals in a specific major. and then focus on X falsifying data, plagiarism, authority as constructed. If it's a business or management course, you could have students decide if they should partner with a scandalous business, looking at it from a public relations perspective. You could also ask students how they would feel about a specific author or celebrity speaking at their graduation. Would they protest? Would they be upset? Or if someone was receiving an honorary degree. So we're going to move ahead, and I'm going to bring it back to Allison to wrap this up.
So in conclusion, make it fun. There are so many benefits to including fun in any lesson that you're doing. Some of the benefits for the students are it's going to increase their engagement, it's going to increase their information retention, it's going to help reduce stress and anxiety, and it will create a sense of bonding with their fellow classmates and with you as a librarian. This is going to also increase faculty collaboration. They're going to see their students having fun and want to bring them back for more. And all of this is going to encourage everyone to come back and keep using the library. And finally, we just want to know you're not alone. Don't try to do all of this from scratch. We have shared the lesson plans in the chat, and there are tons of fun and engaging lesson plans you can find online and adapt for your library. Some of the best advice we got was don't let perfection get in the way of getting something done. Thank you all so much, and we will now open it up to questions.
Thank you so much, Allison and Brianne. That was wonderful. People were saying, what a fun lesson, amazing, obsessed, right? So there was one question that came in as your presentation. Did they know who Marvin Gaye was?
They didn't say they did, and I didn't want to ask and then be very upset. They didn't. I was surprised they didn't know. I mean, I wasn't surprised they might not have known about the lawsuit, but like Blurred Lines was everywhere for a while. But then I did the math and they were 7 when it came out. But no, didn't seem to know who Marvin Gaye was either.
So questions are rolling in, but I'll try to go in the order that they came in. Do you have a list of potential celebrities that are quote unquote safe to use with students?
We do. So in the lesson plan, we did just put like a brief bullet point list of ones we've been using, but I will warn you to be careful because I'm not sure if it was included on that list, but we had Prince Harry. And then a high school class come in, and the very first thing that came up when you put Prince Harry in scandal now is the Puff Daddy trials and parties with underage children. And it is saying he wasn't involved, but also that was the headline. And I probably will take Prince Harry off the list for a little while. So check the news, see if they've done something recently.
Thank you for that. And then are any ideas for how to adapt it for grad students?
Yeah, and I actually got this. I want to give a shout out to some people at LOX. They had some really good ideas. It was like the business ones to put it into falsifying data. So we did have a photo of the president of Stanford up there, but to really, and part of it would be like, maybe you could say, hey, do we have this person in our library catalog? So it's not, a lot of times people say, here, just look at a peer-reviewed article, but we have articles by people who have had papers retracted. And it's really, I think, a good idea to have students think about what does peer-reviewed mean and who do we give authority to? I think a big emphasis for grad students, in my opinion, would be authority as constructed, and really going into that and consequences for plagiarism.
Well, thank you so much for answering our Q&A. There was still more, so if people have questions for Alice and Brianne, I'm sure you can reach out to them. That concludes our lightning talk. So thank you to all our presenters. It was wonderful getting to learn your projects and your great ideas. And we'll move over to our general Q&A. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Amazing presentations. Does anybody have any questions? You can put them in the chat still. We'll be doing a Q&A for about a couple of minutes, for about 15 minutes. We can also do anything inside the chat or in the Google document. Yes, and please fill out, we've put it in the chat. Please fill out our Google form. We are offering some prizes. We have some wonderful prizes, some knit items, some crocheted items, and then also some gift cards. So please give us some feedback about this conference. We really, really appreciate any feedback that you may have. I see one, and I'm not sure if we've done this, but how did you teach students to evaluate gossip sites or gossip adjacent sites on Google? That's for our most recent presenters.
Hold on. Sorry. So I mentioned is we haven't been using it. Is this for the gossip celebrity question?
Yes,
Sorry.
it is.
So we went back and forth, and so right now we're mostly doing it for like our entry-level intro to English freshman classes. So we are focusing on just how to use Wikipedia to find search terms and not as your research, and then to bring them into library catalog. But we have thought about adapting it to having them actually find a scandal website and to use SIFT to find out if it's credible. That would be kind of a different exercise, but I think that's one of the benefits of this is you can make it whatever you want. But I do think kind of incorporating the SIFT method would go really seamlessly into this exercise. I think you could also use it for TikTok. I know one of the poster presentations is also doing TikTok as well. I think TikTok would be a really fun way to do this.
That would be an interesting, yeah, I'd like to see that. Anybody else have a question for our presenters? I love it how somebody put Justin Timberlake. I think that would be awesome.
I hadn't thought of him. He will be added.
Yeah. We'll be changing that link. It looks like the survey we sent up went to the editing version. So we'll just give you the one. We'll change it a little bit. Any questions? Any questions for our poster presenters? Any questions for Carrie or Ed? They're still here. Or Emily? Any comments on any of the presentations or posters?
Natalie, I think there was one question that might have been missed for our last presenters. Do you think it would be too triggering to do a similar event for background checks of candidates and causes for political candidates?
I think any of those, anything could be, and I think it just depends on the context. So, I mean, like if you're doing this for a history class and the history class is focusing on racism in the 20th century, yeah, put triggering scandals in there. The students know what they're coming into, and I think that's the big issue. So, like, if it fits the theme of the class or what you want them to learn, I don't think it's a problem if it's triggering. My issue is as long as the students know what they're coming into. I don't want it to be like, hey, we're doing a fun celebrity scandal, and then like, here's rape. Like that's not what we wanted to do. I mean, anything has the opportunity to be triggering. I think a big king for us was for what we wanted to do, it didn't need to be there, especially because we banter the hiring decision. So there are some things you don't want to be a devil's advocate on that wouldn't be appropriate. But if you announce to students ahead of the class, if it is something that matches a specific assignment, I don't think that's as big of an issue as long as people are aware of what's going on. But I would value feedback on that as well from people.
And it looks like we have that URL. Thank you so much for your answer. And then Peggy just asked, when will today's presentations be available online? We generally try to do it between 3 to 4 weeks. I know some people are taking some time off, so we're hoping to have it available on the LILi website within a month. Sometimes we surprise ourselves when we get it within less time, and then we will share out the recording links to the people who've signed up for the recordings. So as we noticed, we did stop during our 30-minute break. And so we had a really good chat, conversation chat and regular conversation. We had some good questions. Unfortunately, since it was not recorded, it didn't capture us talking, but I believe from what I've seen on Zoom, that it did record the chat. So if there's notes on chat that you're interested in, I'm hoping to send that out as soon as possible. So yes, please feel free to fill out that form and give us your feedback. And we really appreciate you guys spending your time here. And the presenters were amazing. And this was such a great topic. So it's really, really great to see all the information that everybody is coming, coming against. So yeah, so it's 2:07, and if people do not have another question or have any comments or anything like that, maybe we'll just close it out early and say yes, you guys, you will not get the recordings, but they will be, somebody just asked right now, you'll not be getting the recordings, but it will be alive on LILi's LibGuide within about a month. So we're hoping within a month. Okay. Any other questions or comments? I'm really hoping we get to save that chat when we stopped recording. So I really, really hope so. But thank you again for your phenomenal questions and your amazing presentation. So we wish you well, and we look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow for tomorrow's second part. All right. Have a wonderful day, and don't forget to fill out the form. Again, great prizes. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Happy Thursday.
Thank you so much. It was really outstanding. And
thank you, Marcia. Thank you for your comments too. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you. That yoga exercise, and you've done so much for us, Natalie. Thank you a lot. Have a great day. Bye.
You too. For us volunteers, do we want to stay on a little bit, or do we want to just sign off?
Maybe stop recording real quick.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea too. Thank you.